Ravi was a farmer who lived a quiet life near a small village surrounded by fields and trees. His land was not very large, but it was enough to feed his family and give him peace. Every morning, Ravi woke up before sunrise, washed his face with cold water, and walked out to check his crops. The barn behind his house was old and made of wood and stone. It had been there since the time of his father and grandfather. Ravi never questioned the barn. It was simply part of his life, just like the soil under his feet. One afternoon, after a long day in the fields, Ravi went into the barn to clean it. The floor was covered with dirt, dry hay, and small stones. He wanted to make space for storing grain before the next season. As he pushed his shovel into the ground, he suddenly felt resistance. The shovel made a sharp metal sound instead of hitting soil. Ravi stopped and looked down. He brushed away the dirt with his hands and saw something round and rusty. It was a metal pipe. Ravi felt confused. He had never seen this pipe before. It was thick and strong, and it went straight down into the ground. The pipe did not look new. It looked very old, like it had been there for many years. Ravi wiped the sweat from his face and stared at it. His heart began to beat faster. He wondered who could have placed it there and why. He tried to remember if his father had ever mentioned something like this. His father was a quiet man too, but he used to tell stories at night sometimes. Ravi could not recall any story about a hidden pipe or something under the barn. The thought made him uneasy. At the same time, curiosity pulled at his mind. Ravi felt like the land was trying to tell him a secret. He stood up and walked around the barn, thinking carefully. The walls looked the same as always. The roof creaked softly as the wind passed over it. Everything felt normal, yet nothing felt the same anymore. Ravi knew that once he had seen the pipe, he could not ignore it. That evening, Ravi sat with his wife during dinner. She talked about daily things and plans for the next market day. Ravi listened, but his mind was far away. He kept seeing the pipe in his thoughts. He wanted to tell her, but something inside him told him to wait. He decided to understand it himself first. When night came, Ravi lay on his bed, staring at the dark ceiling. The sounds of insects filled the air. Sleep did not come easily. He kept thinking about the pipe and what might be under the barn. He was not afraid, but he felt a strange weight in his chest. It felt like the past was reaching out to him. The next morning, Ravi returned to the barn early. Sunlight entered through the cracks in the wooden walls. Dust floated in the air. Ravi knelt down near the pipe again. He cleaned around it carefully and saw that the opening was wide enough for a person to enter. The inside of the pipe was dark, and he could not see the bottom. Ravi went back to his house and brought a rope and a flashlight. The rope was strong and used for lifting heavy sacks. He tied one end of the rope to a thick wooden beam in the barn. He tested it by pulling hard. It held well. Ravi took a deep breath and turned on the flashlight. A bright beam of light cut through the darkness of the pipe. Before climbing in, Ravi paused. He placed his hand on the ground and closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his family and his land. He did not know why, but he felt this step was important. He opened his eyes and slowly lowered himself into the pipe. The metal felt cold against his hands. The air inside was cooler than above. Ravi climbed down carefully, using his feet and hands to stay balanced. The light from the barn grew smaller as he went deeper. The sounds from above slowly faded away. Only his breathing and the soft echo of movement remained. After a long descent, Ravi's feet touched solid ground. He stood still for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. He shined the flashlight around and saw that he was standing in a narrow stone passage. The walls were smooth and strong. This was not a natural hole. Someone had built this place with care. Ravi felt a mix of wonder and shock. He walked forward slowly. The ground was dry, and the air smelled old, like time itself was trapped here. His footsteps echoed softly as he moved deeper into the passage. Every step made his heart beat faster. He noticed markings on the walls. They were faint but clear enough to see. Simple symbols and lines had been carved into the stone. Ravi did not understand their meaning, but he felt they were important. This place was not empty. It carried memories. As Ravi walked further, the passage began to widen. The ceiling rose higher, and the space opened up. His flashlight revealed a larger underground area ahead. Ravi stopped at the edge and stared. His hands trembled slightly. He knew he was about to see something that would change the way he looked at his land forever. He took one step forward, then another. The beam of light moved slowly across the space. Shadows danced on the walls. Ravi's mind raced with questions. Who made this place? Why was it hidden under his barn? Why had no one spoken of it? Ravi stood there in silence, holding the flashlight tightly. The answers were close, but he did not yet know what they would bring. Above him was the quiet barn and open fields. Below him was a forgotten world waiting to be discovered. Ravi stood still at the edge of the wide underground space. His flashlight moved slowly from one side to the other. The light showed stone walls that curved gently, as if the room had been planned with care. The floor was flat and clean, not rough like a cave. Ravi could feel that this place was made by human hands long ago. His breathing slowed as he tried to stay calm. He took a few careful steps forward. Each step made a soft sound that echoed through the space. The room felt silent but not empty. Ravi felt like he was not alone, even though he could see no one. The air was cool and dry. It smelled old, like a place that had not been touched for many years. As Ravi walked further inside, he noticed shapes ahead. At first, they looked like shadows, but as he came closer, he saw wooden boxes. There were many of them, placed neatly in rows. Some were large, some small. They were covered with dust, but they were not broken. Ravi touched one gently. The wood felt hard and strong, even after all this time. Ravi felt a deep sense of surprise. He had expected to find dirt or stone, not careful storage. He wondered who had placed these boxes here and why. He moved his flashlight over the boxes and noticed marks carved into the wood. The marks were simple symbols, similar to the ones he had seen on the walls of the passage. He opened one box slowly. Inside, he saw old tools made of metal and wood. They looked like farming tools, but different from the ones used today. Some tools had strange shapes, and others looked carefully polished. Ravi lifted one tool and felt its weight. It felt strong, made to last. He placed the tool back and opened another box. Inside were small cloth bags. Ravi opened one bag carefully. It held old coins. The coins were dull and worn, but their shapes were clear. Ravi had never seen coins like these before. They were from a time far older than his own. Ravi's hands shook slightly as he closed the box. This place was not just storage. It was history. He felt like he was walking through the past of his land and his people. He tried to imagine the faces of those who had come here before him. He imagined worried eyes and careful hands placing these items into boxes, hoping to keep them safe. As he walked deeper into the room, Ravi noticed a stone table near the far wall. On top of it lay rolled pieces of cloth and papers wrapped tightly. Ravi approached slowly. He felt a strange respect for these objects, as if they should not be touched without care. He picked up one rolled paper and unwrapped it gently. The paper was yellowed with age but still readable. It showed drawings of fields, houses, and paths. Ravi realized it was a map. The map looked like the land around his village, but slightly different. Some paths were gone now, and some fields looked smaller or larger. Ravi traced the lines with his finger. He noticed a mark on the map that showed a barn symbol. His heart skipped a beat. That symbol matched the place where his barn stood today. Ravi understood then that this underground room and the barn above were connected by design, not by chance. He leaned back and sat on a stone near the table. His mind felt heavy with thoughts. This place had been planned carefully by people who knew the land well. They had chosen his farm for a reason. Ravi wondered if his ancestors had known about this place. If they had, why had they never spoken of it? Ravi stood up again and continued exploring. Along one wall, he found carved words in simple writing. The words were faded, but Ravi could still read them slowly. They spoke of hard times when people feared losing everything. They spoke of unity, of sharing burdens, and of protecting the future. Ravi felt a deep emotion rise inside him. These words were not about fear alone. They were about hope. The people who built this place believed that someone in the future would find it and remember them. Ravi felt like that someone was him. He walked to the far corner of the room and noticed a small door made of thick wood. It was different from the boxes and walls. It stood alone, quiet and closed. Ravi hesitated. His heart beat faster again. He placed his hand on the door and felt its rough surface. He pushed the door slowly. It opened with a low sound that echoed softly. Inside was a smaller room. This room felt more personal. There were fewer items, but they were placed with great care. In the center was a small wooden chest. Ravi walked toward the chest and knelt beside it. He opened it carefully. Inside were folded clothes, neatly arranged. They were simple clothes, like the ones worn by farmers long ago. On top of the clothes lay a small object wrapped in cloth. Ravi unwrapped it slowly. It was a small carved figure made of wood. The figure showed a farmer holding a bundle of crops. The carving was simple but full of meaning. Ravi felt warmth in his chest. This figure did not represent wealth. It represented life and work. Ravi placed the figure back and closed the chest. He stood in silence for a long moment. He felt like he had stepped into a promise made long ago. A promise to protect, to remember, and to pass on values stronger than any object. He turned off his flashlight for a moment and stood in the dark. The silence felt peaceful. Ravi knew that this discovery was only the beginning. There were still answers waiting for him. He turned the flashlight back on and looked around one last time. Ravi took a deep breath and began walking back toward the passage. His steps felt different now. He no longer felt like a curious farmer. He felt like a guardian of something important. As he climbed back toward the barn, he knew his life would never feel the same again. Ravi climbed out of the pipe and stood quietly inside the barn. Morning light fell through the wooden gaps, but everything felt different now. The barn that once felt ordinary now felt like a doorway between two worlds. Ravi covered the pipe opening carefully with soil and hay, just as it had been before. He did not want anyone to notice it. Not yet. He walked back to his house slowly. His steps felt heavy, not from fear, but from responsibility. His wife noticed his silence but did not ask questions. Ravi washed his hands and sat down, but his mind was still deep underground. The boxes, the map, the carved words, and the small wooden figure kept returning to his thoughts. All day, Ravi worked in the fields, but his hands moved without his mind. He kept thinking about the people who built that place. They were farmers like him. They worked the same soil, watched the same sky, and feared the same uncertain future. He felt connected to them in a way he had never felt before. As the sun moved lower, Ravi made a decision. He needed to understand more. That evening, he returned to the barn with extra oil for the flashlight, some water, and a small cloth bag. He climbed down the pipe again, moving more confidently this time. The underground space welcomed him with the same cool silence. Ravi went straight to the stone table where the rolled papers were kept. He picked up another paper and opened it carefully. This one was not a map. It was written in simple words, almost like a letter. Ravi read slowly, taking his time to understand each line. The writing spoke of a season when the land faced danger. Crops failed, and outsiders tried to take control of fields and homes. The villagers had gathered and decided to protect what they could. They built the underground room together. Each family placed something important inside, not for themselves, but for the future. Ravi felt his throat tighten. These people were not hiding wealth only. They were hiding memory. They wanted their children and grandchildren to know who they were and how they lived. Ravi realized that the room was not meant to stay hidden forever. It was meant to be found when the time was right. He continued reading and found names written carefully at the bottom of the page. The names were simple village names. Ravi scanned them slowly. Then his eyes stopped. One name stood out. It was the same family name that Ravi carried. His hands trembled slightly as he read it again. Ravi sat down on the stone floor. His heart felt full and heavy at the same time. His family had not just owned the land. They had been trusted with a duty. They had protected the entrance, the barn, and the silence around it. That trust had survived through generations. Ravi stood up and walked to the small wooden chest again. He opened it and took out the folded clothes. They were old but clean. He imagined someone carefully folding them, hoping they would be seen again one day. Beneath the clothes, he noticed something he had not seen before. A thin book bound in cloth. Ravi lifted the book gently. It was a journal. The pages were filled with writing, careful and steady. He began reading from the first page. The journal belonged to a farmer who had helped build the underground place. The farmer wrote about daily life, about planting seeds, about sharing food, and about teaching children to respect the land. The writing was simple, but it carried deep feeling. Ravi felt like he was listening to a voice from the past. The farmer wrote about fear, but also about hope. He wrote that one day, someone would find this place and understand why it was built. That person would know that the land was not owned, but borrowed from the future. Ravi closed the journal and held it close to his chest. He felt tears in his eyes, but he stayed strong. He understood now that the shock was not gold or coins. The true discovery was a story, a duty, and a connection that time had not broken. Ravi placed everything back carefully. He did not take anything except the journal. He felt that the journal needed to be read again in the light above. As he walked back toward the passage, he noticed something new on the wall. A carving he had not paid attention to before. It showed a simple drawing of a barn, with a line leading downward. Beside it was a symbol that looked like an open hand. Ravi understood its meaning. The place was meant to be guarded, not locked away forever. It was meant to be shared when the right person arrived. Ravi climbed back up and covered the pipe once again. Night had fallen by the time he returned to his house. He lit a small lamp and opened the journal on his table. He read page after page, slowly and carefully. Each word felt important. The journal spoke of choosing kindness over fear, of working together instead of alone, and of protecting values more than objects. Ravi realized that the underground room was a lesson hidden beneath the soil. It was waiting for someone who still believed in simple work and honest living. Ravi stayed awake late into the night, reading and thinking. By the time the lamp burned low, he knew one thing clearly. This discovery was not meant to make him rich. It was meant to remind him of who he was. When Ravi finally rested, his sleep was deep and calm. For the first time since finding the pipe, his heart felt steady. He knew there was still more to uncover, but he was no longer afraid. The land had trusted him with its secret, and he was ready to honor it. Ravi woke up before sunrise with a clear mind. The journal rested beside his bed, wrapped carefully in cloth. The words he had read the night before stayed with him. They did not feel old or distant. They felt alive. Ravi washed his face and stepped outside. The sky was pale, and the fields were quiet. The land looked the same, but Ravi felt different. He went to the barn and stood for a long moment. He placed his hand on the wooden wall and felt its rough surface. He knew now that the barn was more than a shelter for tools and animals. It was a promise kept through time. Ravi decided that the next step should not be taken alone. Later that morning, Ravi visited the village elders. They were men and women who had seen many seasons and carried stories in their eyes. Ravi greeted them with respect and asked for time to speak. They gathered under a large tree near the center of the village. Ravi took a deep breath and began. He told them about the pipe beneath his barn. He spoke slowly and clearly. He described the passage, the room, the boxes, and the map. He showed them the journal. The elders listened in silence. No one interrupted him. When he finished, the air felt heavy with meaning. One elder named Mohan spoke first. He had a calm voice and steady hands. He said that he had heard whispers as a child. Old whispers about a hidden place built during hard times. The whispers had no details and were treated like stories meant to teach caution and unity. Hearing Ravi speak made those whispers feel real again. Another elder named Sita leaned forward and asked to see the journal. Ravi handed it to her carefully. She read a few pages and closed it with respect. She said the writing carried truth. Not the truth of wealth, but the truth of survival and care for the land. The elders talked among themselves for a long time. Ravi waited quietly. Finally, they agreed on one thing. The underground place was not meant to be taken apart or shown to everyone. It was meant to be protected and remembered. They decided that a small group would visit it to understand how best to preserve it. That afternoon, Ravi guided the elders to his barn. He uncovered the pipe and helped them climb down safely. Their faces showed surprise and respect as they entered the underground room. They moved slowly, touching nothing without thought. The silence spoke to them as it had spoken to Ravi. They read the carvings on the walls and studied the boxes. They stood before the stone table and looked at the maps. The elders felt the weight of the past settle around them. They understood that the builders of this place had planned carefully and trusted deeply. After returning to the surface, the elders made a plan. The underground room would remain closed and protected. The journal would be kept safely and shared through teaching, not display. The story would be told to the village children so they would know the value of unity and care. Ravi felt relief and pride. He had feared being alone with the secret, but now he felt supported. The responsibility was shared, just as the people of the past had intended. Days passed, and Ravi returned to his routine. He worked the fields, repaired fences, and tended to animals. Life moved forward, but the past walked beside him. He noticed small changes in himself. He listened more. He spoke with care. He felt connected to his neighbors in a deeper way. One evening, Ravi sat with his wife and told her everything. He spoke openly and calmly. She listened without fear. When he finished, she placed her hand on his and smiled gently. She said that the land had chosen him because he lived with respect. Her words brought him comfort. As weeks turned into months, Ravi helped the elders teach the children. They did not speak of secret tunnels or hidden rooms in detail. They spoke of cooperation, patience, and courage. They spoke of farmers who stood together when times were hard. The children listened with wide eyes. Ravi sometimes returned to the underground room alone. He checked that it remained safe and untouched. Each visit felt like a quiet conversation with the past. He felt guided, not burdened. One day, Ravi noticed new carvings on the wall near the entrance. They were simple and fresh. He recognized the symbols. They spoke of care and promise. The elders had added them to mark the continuation of the story. Ravi smiled, knowing the chain was unbroken. The land continued to give, and Ravi continued to give back. The shock he had felt at the end of the pipe had turned into understanding. What began as a mystery had become a path. Ravi knew that one day, another person might stand where he had stood. That person would feel the same wonder and responsibility. Ravi felt peace knowing that the message would remain clear. The underground room stayed hidden, but its lesson lived openly. The village grew stronger, not because of what was buried beneath the barn, but because of what was carried in their hearts. Years passed quietly after the elders made their decision. Ravi grew older, but his steps remained steady and his heart remained calm. The land continued to respond to his care. The crops grew strong, the soil stayed rich, and the barn stood firm through changing seasons. To anyone passing by, Ravi was just a farmer living a simple life. Only a few knew the deeper truth beneath his barn. Ravi never spoke of the underground place without reason. He believed that words should be used with care, just like the land. When children asked questions about the old stories, he answered gently. He told them about working together, about protecting what matters, and about thinking of those who come after. He did not speak of pipes or tunnels. He spoke of values. One morning, Ravi noticed his son watching him closely while he worked. The boy was quiet and thoughtful, much like Ravi had been as a child. Ravi saw curiosity in his eyes, not the kind that seeks reward, but the kind that seeks understanding. Ravi knew the time would come, but he also knew it could not be rushed. As seasons continued to change, Ravi felt the weight of age slowly settling into his bones. He did not fear it. He felt ready. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the fields, Ravi called his son to the barn. His voice was calm, and his hands were steady. Inside the barn, Ravi showed his son the exact spot where the pipe lay hidden. He did not uncover it fully. He only placed his hand on the ground. He told his son that beneath this place rested a story older than both of them. A story of people who worked together to protect the future. Ravi did not take his son underground. He did not open the passage. He simply spoke. He shared what the journal had taught him. He spoke of responsibility, trust, and patience. He said that some truths are not meant to be rushed. They are meant to be earned through character. His son listened carefully. He did not ask for proof. He did not demand to see more. He nodded slowly and placed his hand next to his father's. In that moment, Ravi knew the lesson had been passed on. Time continued its quiet movement. Ravi grew weaker, but his spirit remained strong. The village changed slowly. New houses were built, paths shifted, and children grew into adults. Yet the heart of the village stayed the same. Unity and care remained at its center. When Ravi could no longer work the fields as before, neighbors helped without being asked. Ravi smiled often during those days. He saw the same spirit that once built the underground room living openly above ground. One evening, Ravi sat outside his house, watching the sky darken. His breathing was slow, but his mind was clear. He looked toward the barn one last time. He felt no regret and no fear. The land was safe. The story was safe. After Ravi passed peacefully, the village gathered to honor him. They spoke of his kindness, his honesty, and his quiet strength. They spoke of how he always put the community before himself. The barn remained standing, silent and unchanged. Years later, Ravi's son became a farmer like his father. He worked the same land and cared for it with the same respect. He taught his own children the same lessons he had learned. The underground place remained untouched, waiting patiently. One day, far in the future, someone would notice something unusual beneath the barn. That person would feel the same curiosity Ravi once felt. And when that day came, the land would decide if the time was right. What waited at the end of the pipe was never meant to shock with wealth or power. It was meant to remind. It reminded those who found it that true value lies not in what is hidden underground, but in what is carried forward with care. The barn stood quietly through generations. Beneath it rested a story of unity. Above it lived people who continued to honor that story through simple actions and shared respect. The discovery that once shocked Ravi became a foundation for peace. Not because it was revealed, but because it was understood.